Welcome to another live stream. The Gangstalking, Undead, the assault of the undead gang stalker. I don't think it's inaccurate. I know there's a lot of there's a lot of disinformation out there, and I know that people involved in the government programs, stuff like that, they look very much alive. That they're just dead inside. And the targeted individuals out there who are dealing with this nightmare of gang stalking, they know that these people aren't regular individuals. They're not. They may seem like it. They may appear like regular people, but they're not. And I've referenced the reality flip that targets deal with, and how when you experience this stuff, rather than seeing this as a descent into some type of alternate reality, you're really just seeing what's really there, the unadulterated truth about where you are. It's there's people out there that are not involved in this, and we've talked about the percentage. How many people know about this? I think it's probably, depending on what you mean by knowledge or knowing, I think there's probably at least 30% of the population minimum. I'm not going to haggle about that. At least from what I've experienced, no matter where you go, there's always a couple of them around, minimum. And your stocking might change for a while, and but when you get it, or when targets deal with that heavy stuff, it's it doesn't matter where they go. It doesn't matter if they leave their city or whatever. That's it's waiting for them. And they could go into a grocery store, or go try to check into a hotel or something, and no matter where they go, there's always a couple of them. It's very consistent. And the thing about them is, a lot of the stuff that targets deal with, they come to a lot of different conclusions. The problem with gang stalking is there are a lot of ways that this can work. Okay. I mean, you're dealing with people who sometimes are being paid. You're dealing with people who are involved in like witchcraft and stuff like that. You're dealing with people who are maybe heavily into methamphetamines or something. I was talking to a target about that earlier today, and it might as well be witchcraft at that point. There's something about methamphetamines it's just different than the other drugs you're going to run into. And even the people that are hardcore addicts, they notice that. And some of them call it the devil's poison, or the devil's dandruff or whatever. And there's always demonic stuff around that. I've heard a lot of targets talk about that. That one of the main underground components to a lot of the stalking is these people who are just hooked up on these methamphetamines, crank, meth, and you hear a lot of weird stuff about spells and things they're doing to the drugs when they're making. I don't know. I mean, I know it's bad. I've seen it. But you got a lot of ways that people are involved. You have people that are just involved in maybe things like Freemasonry or whatever, where they're exposed to spiritual manipulation. And you got people that are, suckered into things. I think it was Nick talked about people being blackmailed and threatened and stuff. There's some of that stuff out there. But the people that it's consistent. The people that you're dealing with, they're definitely not born again Christians. I've heard a lot of targets talk about getting stalked in church, and that's a very troubling, uh, little game to play because you think it should be safe. It's not. I'm not saying it's in every church. I'm just saying it happens to people. Um, but even the people that aren't involved in it, who don't know anything about it, a lot of times they're the walking dead. They don't know. They're blind if nothing else. And you have this component that targets deal with. It's the directed conversations, people knowing things about their personal life, and they're not just reading into it either. That can happen, of course, once they get a target sensitized and paranoid or whatever. It's easy to be looking for this stuff everywhere. That's the whole science behind it. But a lot of the things that targets deal with, leave people speculating as to what is really going on. And gang stalking, it involves people in this world. It involves the puppets. It involves the government programs and people in witchcraft and people that are sold over to whatever, kind of giving themselves over to something, and they're like vampires. They're just like the undead. They feed on you. They have their orders, and they have their rules and everything else. And it's not of this world, really. If you wanted to be, I don't know, descriptive of what you're really dealing with, even the technology out there that people talk about is just, I mean, that's just surface level stuff compared to what's really behind the scenes. I think. I mean, you hear a lot of targets talk about that. They'll go out in the country or whatever they do to try to get away. And, it's this, satellite's got to be following me. And sometimes that's happening. I mean, I'm not going to deny it. But I don't think they need all that to get to you. And I think that, whatever technology is out there has been given. People talk about the reptilians and they get into all kinds of weird stuff. And there's some truth to that mythos when you get into the bloodlines and you go back to, the origins of Freemasonry and Egypt, ancient Egypt, and all the stuff that come out of that hidden knowledge and secret wisdom. And you have the secret societies that have emerged, and all that symbolism is there. And you have the genetic mingling, but it's just not like what a lot of people try to describe. You have the genetic things out there going on, but it's very recessive at this point. It's not like some of the mythos out there where these things are eating children. You hear about underground facilities filled with these things or whatever, and they're just taking the kids out there and feeding them to these things. But I don't think it's like that. But I do see some genetic stuff. There's a kernel of truth to a lot of these things, even when you get into the adrenochrome and you look back into some of the non-canonical sources where these half-breed angel human hybrids are trying to retain their mental faculties and whatever, and they're literally drinking human blood. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but that's, if you look back into it, that's what you're going to find. But you have all these components to the stalking, and targets are dealing with that. It's like, who are these people? Targets, swear that they're reading their mind and, playing all these games with them. And you have to know what you're dealing with. As a target, if you don't understand that you're in a spiritual battle, you're in trouble. You really are. If you believe that there's nothing out there, but some damn government program or whatever, you're missing the forest for the trees. You know, you're missing the whole point, and you're not going to really understand why they're after you. And it doesn't mean that there isn't the government aspect. They've got all that stuff. They're doing it. Who really knows exactly what kind of technology they've got? I was talking to a Target earlier today, and they had V2K and all that stuff quite a while ago, and I think it was Cruz. He talked about that neurosurgeon who blew the whistle on some of that stuff. That he was helping them implant chips and animals, and they were testing out the capability of Wi-Fi in controlling people. I mean, they're doing all this stuff, or the blue light conspiracy. They've got rid of the incandescent bulbs and all these different things, the flicker rate of the televisions, and all kinds of different components of mind control that people don't even know about. The technology is real. I mean, but it's like I said, it's just the hand me downs. It's just a type of, I don't know, inferior subset of what's really out there, in my opinion. And the stuff that targets are dealing with is literally outside of our dimension. And you hear a lot of stories from targets, because when people talk about V2K and they talk about voices or demonic stuff, or the poltergeist kind of activity, you have all those different explanations. Well, the government's got this kind of tech, or they can move stuff around in your house. I don't know about all that, because when you get into some of that stuff, I mean, who knows what they've got, but it's usually going along with the theme that's just trying to kind of wash all that stuff away. There's no demons doing any of this stuff. There's really no spiritual component. It's just an illusion. It's all just tech. I don't think that's true, but I think that there's probably technology we don't know about. But when targets talk about the the V2K or hearing voices, all that stuff, there's different things mixed in with it. Sometimes they're hearing things in their head. They got that chatter or whatever. A lot of targets will talk about the constant, V2K, or the constant, 24/7 stuff. The themes that repeat over and over, that psychic driving that just kind of reprograms targets, and it's like an infiltration into their brain. And the whole goal, just like all the other stuff targets deal with, is just to get you to be infected, to get you to that place where you're your own worst enemy, you're your own handler at that point. And then you hear other stories from targets where it's like it sounds like it's maybe somewhere in their backyard, or across the alley or something, or maybe somebody's up on your roof, and you can hear stuff, or someone's even in your house, and it sounds like footsteps. You can feel it on the fly. I've had that weird kind of thing happen to me. And, it's like there's obviously, I got cameras, and it sounds crazy. I've talked about it before, but, you could feel, whatever was going on the walls and everything. And there was no one on the roof. There was no one outside. It was even in the winter where they would have to leave tracks, but I had cameras going, and even the cat could hear it, and you could feel it. Scared the hell out of my cat. It sounded like somebody was throwing something around my house. I've had it before where you could literally feel footsteps. Boom, 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 boom. So like they're coming down the hall to where you are, and it's usually surrounded by other activity or other sequelae. Targets talk about tinnitus, or different things. Suddenly they feel off, or anxious or uneasy or whatever. And you get a compilation of all these things, and you don't know how they're doing it all. But I don't, I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say that none of it's tech. I think that there's a lot of spiritual stuff going on, and the people that become involved in this are definitely uh, spiritually influenced, even if they're not possessed. But the whole idea of targets dealing with these people who seem to be feeding on it, or seem to be following some guidelines or rules, or have a very strong motivation to to get you into an emotional state, to provoke the loosh out of the target and to get them into that mode of manipulation. They can they're they're like dealing with vampires or zombies. It's like dealing with the undead. And the whole idea of these people, being nothing more than oikotarians sold out to the collective, because that's what it is. When you're a target and you're dealing with this stuff, it's like they're all connected. It's like dealing with the Borg, and they all seem to be connected that way. And you got your little themes, and the street theater and the direct conversations, and they all seem to know. They all seem to have that little commonality, and I don't think that's just some government thing. I think that it's the demonic hive, that it involves all that stuff. Like I said, not all these people are obviously or perfectly possessed. They're just, some of them are just influenced. Some of them are just blind. Some of them are making money. Some of them are blackmailed. Some of them are, though. And it sounds crazy. And at the point where you're trying to figure all this stuff out, you got to decide which is worse. Targets, they get in that dilemma where they're trying to explain this stuff, and well, it's either something like that, or you're special and you've got hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars being spent on you, just a regular person, for seemingly nothing, and everybody's working for the FBI or some government program or whatever, and then you got all the the inconsistencies in that. Which is worse? I don't. It's both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And you got targets out there talking about the 5G or implants, and then you got the demonic stuff, and you got people that seem to be around certain activities, like I mentioned, the drugs and stuff like that, the methamphetamines. You have other people out there doing series of shows on the methamphetamine underworld involved in gang stalking, and to me, it's just proof that there's a spiritual component to it. And a lot of targets will get into that place where they do believe that everybody's being hired by the government, and it's just you see them living maybe in a homeless camp or something. They're making videos. They've been chased around. And now they're accusing the homeless people around them of working for the CIA or whatever. I don't think it has to be that way. But it seems to be more plausible that individuals are being influenced spiritually. Sometimes it's sometimes you're dealing with that kind of thing, and people are paid or whatever, but it just makes a lot more sense. Both explanations sound kind of nutty. It doesn't solve all your problems, but you have to understand the spiritual component of what you're dealing with, and you have to understand, when you're moving through the world of gang stalking, the reality that has changed your life, that's going to play into how you make decisions. I've mentioned that kind of stuff before. You want to go hang out at the bar? Really? I don't think you realize what you're up against. Instead of sitting around there, thinking that they're going to send some agent in there from some government program. There's people already in there that are spiritually, infiltrated. Those types of scenarios are deadly. Or you get involved. You're being too casual, and you think it's nothing but a thing, and somebody's involved in drugs or something like that. You got to watch your back. You have to know what you're dealing with. You're living in a different dispensation of rules now as a targeted individual. You're just going to be friends with somebody. Okay, well, be careful. And it's not that you have to be paranoid or I don't know, apprehensive about everything, but you do have to be realistic. And I learned the hard way, because I've talked about that before. When I first started experiencing this stuff, I was pretty much surrounded by people involved in all that stuff, witchcraft, drugs, all kinds of stuff. They were involved in the New Age. Some of them were involved in secret societies I didn't know about. There's different branches of that kind of thing, that hidden knowledge and secret wisdom. And they don't talk about it. They'll, talk about their teachings and their philosophy or whatever, but it's not Christian. And then they're trying to get you to do drugs, and then all of a sudden they take their mask off, and your world is flipped around. But you think that people are just people. You think that you can negotiate, or that you have the right, to basically be, wherever. And then even when you deal with the Christian aspect of it, you have a type of disinformation out there where, people get this idea that because they're believers or Christians, that they can just go around and cast out demons wherever they go, and nothing can happen to them or whatever. And that's really not biblical. I mean, the Bible does talk about that stuff, but it has to be in its proper context. And even when you get into some of the deliverance ministries or people who deal with that kind of thing, or even believe they have a gift that way, they will tell you that if you don't have permission to be somewhere, if God hadn't sent you somewhere, you don't just go roaming around and declaring war on these spiritual entities. I've gone into the the landscape of that. I've referenced Dr. Michael Heiser quite a bit, and he gets into the Hebrew perspective of the landscape and what you're really dealing with. You get factions like the Orthodox or the Catholic Church, and they kind of believe that these beings are just all fallen angels, but that's not really what's in the Bible. You have an amalgamation between human and the angelic realm in the Genesis 6 account. And when supposedly when they died after the flood, and I talked a little bit about that earlier, that they're allowed to roam around, and they're kind of like the foot soldiers. And there's probably different kinds, because Jesus even referenced that some of them fight, some of them put up a pretty good battle, and it requires fasting and prayer, and they're not, it's not all the same. We don't have all that information, but that's what you're dealing with, and people are literally infested with these things. And when you're dealing with the collective, when you're dealing with the spiritual landscape, that you have to know about, it plays into everything that that you have to do to make decisions as a target, whether it's hanging out in the wrong part of town, or with the wrong people, or taking a chance, doing whatever. You have to know what you're dealing with, and the infiltration aspect requires you to have a certain criteria or wisdom to know what you're dealing with. The Bible talks about that. A tree by its fruit. You have to test spirits You have to know who you're dealing with. You have to, try to protect yourself and be wise. And a lot of the problem that you'll deal with as a target is just you're isolated. Sometimes you just get desperate. I've talked about that. I mean, for me, I was in complete isolation for a long time, and it would get to the point where I would just be talking to store clerks and whatever, and it was really that bad. Um, but that infiltration is going to be something you're going to be dealing with as a target, because they're after you. They've they can, a lot of people will say, well, they can see you, they can see the light and stuff like that you've got. I don't know. And I don't turn gang stalking into a soteriological doctrine in the sense that just because you're a targeted individual, you're a Christian, or you're some kind of chosen one or something like that. You're chosen to be attacked. I know that, but as far as the Bible's concerned, your chosenness is when you are in Christ by faith, and you're absolutely a target at that point, whether you're a gang stalking victim or not. Absolutely, 100%. I mean, but to try to equate that with everybody out there who experiences this type of harassment, I don't think that. But they do know who you are, and it's like all the directed conversation stuff and the street theater and the little innuendos and games and all those things that targets play with. They have knowledge about you. I've heard that from a lot of targets, that when they start connecting the dots, or they deal with the comments or whatever, it's they've been watching you, or they know about your past and things like that. Even when you get into the psychics or tarot cards or whatever, that a lot of those things that convince people, or the hidden knowledge, the secret wisdom of the secret societies, is that type of communication with people. It's like, well, it's got to be legit, or you get into that aspect of remote viewing, or people have deja vu or whatever, and how does that work? Well, it's the same way. It really is. I mean, think about it. Um, it's like the witchcraft. If people think they have power, do they? Well, not really. They're humans. They have, you're a spirit, I guess, or a soul inside your flesh, depending on whether you hold to the trichotomy or the dichotomy. Some people look at it as soul and flesh, or spirit, soul, and body, and so on and so forth. The problem you're going to run into is that you have to, be indwelt by the Holy Spirit in order to really have that communion with God. So you can break it down a lot of different ways. But the point is you don't have spiritual fingers. I've dealt with a lot of these people. The witchcraft is a pretty big theme in my stalking. It used to be. It's not so much now, because I've kind of neutralized a lot of it, because a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. A lot of it is just there to deceive the people that are involved in it. They believe they've got power, but really they're just hooked up with the collective. They're just hooked up with a spiritual entity. They're an oikotarian now. They're in a type of communion with one of these things, and they're using them, they're condemning them, they're deceiving them. Some of them believe they do have power. I mean, it looks like it. I mean, it looks like these things are happening the way that they're processing the information, but it's not like that. It's the spirits. It's those entities, the dimensional beings that are doing all that stuff, right? They're coming into your world through the porthole of these people in the collective. It's really what it is. I mean, it's almost, if you were really to look at the people that are attacking you, they're nothing more than a little porthole for these other beings to get to you. It's like a little gateway that they use to attack you with their vocal cords, with their actions when they assault you and they break in to your house or whatever. And I'm not saying that there isn't professionals. I've seen some of that. I've seen, weird stuff that I know that there was something going on, government wise or whatever, that it happens. It's, a lot of targets, they've taken, the security measures pretty serious. They've got the, expensive locks. They've got the cameras and everything. And it's just like, if they want in, they're doing it. It's like you're dealing with, experts in espionage or something. And I've seen that kind of weird thing too. And they don't even try to. Either that or they're trying to make you paranoid. It's like all of a sudden the men in black are talking to your neighbors next door, and they're looking at you. It's like, really? So is that it's just classic. I've had stuff like that happen, and you don't know if they're just messing with you or if there's really something going on, and then you deal with all that other weird stuff that goes after you see that kind of thing, and you're like, that's coincidental. Either that or something else going on. But targets deal with all that stuff. But you have to see the spiritual aspect of this thing, and know that these people that are involved in it, even though there is those aspects of the professionals or whatever, or even private investigating firms becoming involved in this stuff. However that works, people in the good old boy society of your community, that there's a lot of spiritual manipulation, and it really is necessary, not only as understanding the motive of why they're coming after you, rather than some type of $1 million government project to freak you out while you're getting your favorite bubble gum at the grocery store. That there's more going on, and it's an incremental psychological framework of manipulation, and it's that collective, that feeding frenzy a lot of times. And sometimes you can be the vessel of wrath too. You could be that object of coercion. These people involved in this stuff, there's deterrence. You tell what's going on. If you back out of this, you're going to be one of them. We'll drive you crazy. We'll drive you to suicide. People talk about getting driven nuts. They're out to drive us crazy. Well, that's kind of part of it. They want to kill you. Feed on you for a while first, I guess. Use you for all you're worth. But the collective, it's manipulated spiritually. There's all kinds of things. It's like when you get into Hollywood, and there's money. Yeah, there's all kinds of things going on. There's the social structure. There's all the connections, but there's spiritual stuff going on there too. It's absolutely a spiritual situation. I'm going to see what's out there in the comments, see who's out here. Silence, awesome. Welcome to the live stream. Thanks again. And I'd like to throw a thank you out there for the people that helped me out. I just, man, it's like I was talking about, you get harassed by these people, and you get to the level that some of these targets are out there. And, if you really want to get to the seasoned targets, you have to do something cheesy, and, when you're, grabbing dollars out of people's pocket, and you don't have to mess with their head at that point. But the psychological terror involved in those type of attacks and stuff is just, man. And I just like to thank all you guys again. Donald, if you're out there, thank you so much. Silence, because it helped me, because it's painful. Targets deal with that kind of thing, and your personal property gets attacked. Not only is it a psychological issue, but it's a financial issue, man. And it sucks to be out there, and everything adds up. You have an accumulation as a target, an individual. All these things come together, and they amalgamate into psychological and financial issues. And that really helped me out, man. Thanks, guys. And for all of you who've helped in the past, man, I don't know what I'd have done without you guys. You helped me out a lot. I just like to throw that thank you out there again. Nicholas Boserman, welcome to the live stream. Andy Smith, awesome. Colton, welcome. Firefighter, always welcome. Thanks for coming in. And let me see here. We got NC, welcome to the live stream. Monster2224, welcome. And let's see what you guys are talking about out there while I was rambling on. On average, Joe, 7C, hope you're doing well out there. And Catherine Jennifer, awesome. Yeah, I do have throat issues. I've been dealing with some fuming, I'm not going to lie. And it's been affecting me. And I've talked about that before. I'm not going to go into it. But Emmanuel Godson, welcome to the live stream. Pamela Barone, awesome. Welcome. Charlie Wilson, welcome to the live stream. Dead Pirate Lenny, always a pleasure. Okay, Emmanuel Godson was the first one in here. Awesome. Yeah, I'll try to preach it out there, Dead Pirate Lenny. I probably shouldn't even have come on. My throat is hurting quite a bit. It's been pretty brutal, and you just try to deal with it. Whatever. I've been dealing with this stuff for a long time. I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to try to ignore it. And let's see what we got going on here. Let's see. Yeah, well, Emmanuel God says, as your voice keeps changing from clear to gravelly, that's what happens. I mentioned before that I went into the doctor, and you can't say nothing. You can't really mention anything about what's going on. You just have them look at you. They say, well, we don't know what's wrong with your throat. Something's irritating it. Obviously, you quit smoking and everything. We don't know. I know what it is. I just don't know what it is exactly. Yeah. Okay. And firefighter says, Malachi, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. Yeah. And well, that's interesting. When you get into that, I think Jesus said, if you can handle it, Elijah has already come. And of course, a lot of people would put that into the prophet John the Baptist, who came up out of the Qumran area. He was a Zadok priest of the order of Zadok. And Christ, of course, is the Melchizedek 11Q13, or the king of the Zadok priests. And those guys were the Essenes. And I've mentioned before, you had the split between the hierarchy in the Hebrews in Israel. You had the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and then the Essenes. And the Essenes went down to the Qumran area, and John the Baptist fulfilled Isaiah coming up out of the wilderness, preparing the way of the Lord. So he came in the power of Elijah. So that would be the exegesis of that. Then that would be EXEGESIS, not JESUS. And let's get into some other comments here. Okay. All right. And NC says they put you on the government's watch list, but the targeting is done by the people who got you listed to begin with. Okay. Well, they do. You're a lot of targets deal with that. They're discredited. There's a lot of stuff that happens to targets. They're blacklisted. And a lot of times they are put on that watch list, man. And that's interesting. I found out I was on one of those back in 2017 when I did a background check, unless that was the wrong information. But that's what came through. You kind of, every now and again, people will talk about that. I don't even know if they mentioned that anymore. It's been a while since I've done it. I thought it'd be interesting to do a background check on myself and see what was out there. you start wondering that kind of thing as a target, because you'll get little themes and accusations, and little games will be played with you, and you're like, what is this, a rumor? Is this something with somebody saying, maybe there's something out there, because you'll get little clues. I remember one time I was going to appointment trying to get into a rental, and they started mentioning stuff about people who were on probation and stuff like that, and I was like, what's that got to do with me? I was like, what do you so I was like, I wonder, if there's something out. If you've got a common name, sometimes that stuff goes over to you. I had something on my credit report for about a year that had nothing to do with me. Finally, it dropped off there. It tore the crap out of my credit score for quite a while, and then it just disappeared. And it said that it was, for the collection agency in my city. And I went down there, and they're like, we don't have you in our system. I don't know what it is. And I'm like, wonderful. And then it just magically disappeared. I don't know. I'm not saying it was stalking. I don't know what it was, but you just never know as a target. Okay, I'm looking at, you guys are joking around about different noises and phenomena. Santa Claus, huh? Okay. Yeah, you thought you heard something on your roof, but it wasn't old Saint Nick. But we do have a Nick in here tonight, and he's our moderator. Appreciate that, Nick. And Andy Smith says, how's it going, Doc? Well, it could be worse, and I'm thankful that it's not. There has been a lot going on, though, and I appreciate your guys' prayers, health problems, stuff like that. And of course, the assault on my personal property and some other things that I think are just pure spiritual. And targets deal with that. There's just a lot of psychological manipulation that goes into the ordeal of the targeted individual, where you just, you get attacked, and you might, deal with panic or anxiety or insomnia or, different types of afflictions and the intrusive thoughts. And just, it's like getting the life sucked out of you. And of course, there's a lot of accusations that go along with that. And, targets, you got to try to keep your chin up and keep moving, man. The Lord will provide. And sometimes he takes us to the edge, and that's okay. You just got to keep going and putting one foot in front of the other. I'd like to thank you guys for your prayers, and I appreciate you asking me, Andy. Let's see what else is going on. And let's see here. Oh, yeah, firefighter mentioned that before. Cops stole a Tower Tarot card off my wall. I bet their lives were destroyed. I bet it went very, very badly for them, huh? Wow. I don't know. I couldn't remember exactly what that story was. I remember you did mention that before, though. Whoops, I accidentally hit something. Sorry, I didn't mean to erase a comment. I'm just scrolling through here. Okay. Yeah, Nicholas says, I'm surprised you had anything like that in your house anyway, firefighter. What's up with that? No, I'm just kidding. And Dead Pirate Lenny says, they really are experts after me. I have trail cams everywhere. They never see anything. Yeah, that's the best part of some of the stuff you deal with as a target. It's like my security cameras, the footage was gone. It was erased all the way back to I think the 6th. I was like, man, whatever. Had a lot of that kind of thing happen. And it's common. It's like a new game for the beginning targets. And you got to do what you got to do, though. You can't make it easy. You don't want to do that. It does help a little. But everybody that everybody that deals with gangstalking has to play that game. It's like you start dealing with that kind of thing. You might hear people outside, or they're doing stuff, or they're trying to break in, or they're breaking in, or they're doing whatever they're doing. And you might even start dealing with that kind of harassment where they just want to keep you awake, and a lot of targets will talk about the constant assaults, people slamming their doors, or pulling up next to their house with the stereos blaring, with the big subwoofers and stuff. They want a reaction though. So if you jump up and start window geeking or run outside, they love that. They'll just keep doing it. I learned to sleep through it, man. If it wakes me up, that's fine. I just lay there and just, man, if they don't get the reaction, they just stop doing it. They'll do something else. But as far as the experts, and as far as playing that game of motion detectors and different locks and cameras and booby traps and everything, we've all done it, and it's fun. You gotta love it. There's nothing you can do about it though. You gotta play. Nicholas says maybe hoping your training would make you a good Manchurian candidate. Yeah, it's just part of the training program. Okay. Okay, let's see what's going on out here. Firefighter says they quite clearly were trying to drive me to an event the media could blame on Trump and Christians. That's interesting. Try to make Christians look crazy, huh? Literally had the feds do everything possible to frame me. Wow, to look there. Yeah, that's that disinformation. And they do frame things that way. I think that's a pretty common thing. Mr. Beach Walker, welcome to the live stream. Welcome in here. It's been a while since I saw you. Glad to have you in. And Monster2224 says, you just got to ask yourself if they intended for you to be a mass shooter. Yeah. Yep. They want that kind of stuff. They want the bloodshed. And, the confusing aspects for a lot of targets is, especially when you look at this stuff like nothing more than a government, scheme or something. It's like they sure are throwing people under the bus in the sense that, some of the people that come up and attack targets, it's like they're really pushing their luck. I don't know. Well, I'm very very thankful that you're concerned about my little ordeal, Mr. Beachwalker, and thank you very much for the concern. Let's see. Yeah, and Mr. Beachwalker also says, I've seen vid that people have expensive camera and security systems and somehow they get past it all. Yeah, that's the freaky part. And you don't know. I mean, there's ways to hack with Bluetooth and other things, especially if you got hooked up to the internet. And there's always a back door that, if you are dealing with the government, it's like your phone and everything else. They've got a way, or your TV or something, the smart TVs and stuff like that. They've got a back door into all that stuff, so you just don't know. But some of it, I think, is possibly spiritual too. I've had some weird things happen where I'm like, man, I don't think a human being did that. I just, and targets will talk about that. You've got everything barred. You've got hardware. You're locked inside, and something happens in your house, or it sounds like something's smashing plates around in your kitchen. I've had that happen, or throwing something around. No one's in there. Nobody's doing that. And there's other things that targets will talk about too, and I've heard that very commonly where stuff will disappear, and they can do that. They can, get in and, they want maybe get your keys or something and make some copies, or, to just freak you out or start arranging stuff in your house. It happens. But, when, when you look for something and you don't find it, and it's, you don't even leave your house before you finally come across it. And it's right where you looked the first time. That's weird. There is demonic stuff like that. Next, you know what you're exactly dealing with here. Firefighter says, they stole everything I own. They put me in for a mental health eval to destroy my credibility. They put me on the no hire list. They most definitely were putting money that I wanted. Vengeance. Yeah. Well, that's common. The whole idea of discrediting targeted individuals is definitely part of what you're going to be dealing with, because in the case that you are dealing with some type of experimental thing where they want to use you as a guinea pig, they in order to obfuscate the activity, they've got to ruin your credibility. Of course, now you're just crazy, right? Nothing's really happening to you. You're just nuts. But it's also that way just to, get people turned against you too. And there's a lot of things that I was talking about, some of the neighborhood stuff that targets deal with a guy not too long ago. And, just with word of mouth, people always assume that because they're getting attacked that people are getting paid or whatever. But that social dynamic of, there's just enough bitterness to go around out there where people will become stalkers, or they'll harass you just to vent. They'll put disinformation out there, like you're a deviant or something. And that's, eventually people might figure out that some of it's a lie and start leaving you alone or start to respect you or whatever. But there's always those people that'll latch on to something like that, and just, they're looking for somebody to vent on. They're looking for a scapegoat. And just from word of mouth, you can get put in that place. There's always a scapegoat in most social, scenarios. They need it. Everybody's got a bitch and get around and there's that guy or that girl. Oh, there they are again. And they got to sit around and it's like they bond over it, man. So you can do a lot of damage just with spreading around a rumor, Yeah, Colton says, are you trying to tell me I need to take a drink of water? No, I'm just kidding. No, seriously, man. I've been dealing with some fuming. I'm not going to lie. It's been intense. It's been going on for a while. Like I said, I'm not going to complain or talk about it, but it is what it is, man. And let's see. Let's see here. And Monster 2224 says, on the topic of mind control, there are statistics of someone becoming a mass shooter, even if if you can't see yourself doing it. I'm just saying it's possible, and it can happen in mind control. I think so. Well, there's so many different ways to manipulate people, man. When you look at all the, emotional facets of the human psyche and all the little things that are going on, it's like when you start breaking down all the little different aspects of what really goes into, the attack of a targeted individual. You've got the human component, you've got the technological stuff, in other words, you've got the physical stuff, you've got the invisible stuff, and it gets pretty intense. You get all kinds of weird spiritual things going on. It's like I was talking about, it all builds up, it all accumulates. You can all of a sudden start feeling uneasy, anxious, having intrusive thoughts. you're having weird dreams or nightmares, and other things are happening, and then you get attacked by the perps, where you get the directed conversations or other things are happening, and it all just accumulates into a type of amalgamated menagerie of manipulation, and it's pretty powerful. And the incremental effect is very demoralizing. And the Bible talks about that. Jesus said, the enemy seeks to wear you out, and it definitely does. God help us all, man, because when you experience these attacks, it is very demoralizing. And even when you get into addiction or whatever, the reason people do something is they're getting something out of it. They're getting regulated, or they're getting some kind of a high or a kick out of it, or they're getting a temporary fix of peace or whatever. And when you deal with all that invisible stuff, whether it's tech or demonic stuff or whatever, aside from all the other things that you got to look forward to as a target, it's like it can really break you down. I mean, it reminds me of stopping, I don't know, maybe smoking cigarettes or some other type of addiction where you never really feel like you can rest, or you never really feel like you can relax. And that's kind of the atmosphere that is created around a target when they start trying to dysregulate you and get you into a place where you're emotional or pessimistic or paranoid or apprehensive or whatever. And it's a constant type of atmospheric pressure. It's not just people doing whatever. It's there's more to it, man. And it is there to create a type of psychological effect. And it's pretty powerful, and they'll involve that game dynamic. And, one of the things they like to do is they like to get targets in there. Oh, you're going to lose, or, and, it's easy to get into that gameplay to where, you think you're playing chess, or whatever. They like that because you're outnumbered and they have power in that scenario that you're in. So that it's like they can even get you into a place where they can puff you up or whatever. Or it's like the harassment switch, where targets, all of a sudden people will be nice to them, and they get you to care again and start doing stuff, and then they'll just take you when you're not expecting it, and then they come in and really yank your chain and get that emotional reaction or whatever. But that's really what it's designed for, and they'll use all those techniques, and they'll even get you to a place like that to where they can involve, that vanity equation, where you're losing and so on and so forth, or that, you should be taking care of this or whatever, or they'll try to manufacture an excuse for why you're dealing with it. And, it's all psychological, man. It's demoralizing, and that's what they want. It's incremental, and it builds up over time. That's why it's important to pray and have the Lord on your side, and other targets who are going to encourage you. It's like I've talked about the support group. Get in there, guys. Harassment support group 911 on Facebook. Okay, what else do we got here? Looks like I must have accidentally went back in the comments. I'm trying to keep up with this. And Monster2224 says, they make you angry enough, they can convince you to do something. Yeah. And that's that goes right along with all the frustration that targets deal with, because it's, they love that. It's easy to just be a chain yanker. When you get into more of those, I don't know, more complex scenarios where they're gaslighting you, or, trying to convince you of something or whatever, that's one thing. But a lot of times it's just primitive, just there to piss you off. And, it's more powerful than you realize. Sometimes I would notice that The guys with the baseball bats are the real obvious attacks, or sometimes they're more effective than all that gameplay that you deal with. It's just it doesn't have to be like that. It can be real simple, and that's all it really takes. Okay. It looks like Unaverage Joe was dealing with something here. Let's see what's going on. Unaverage Joe says, I literally witnessed a middle-aged female arrive at the park I was at, and she approached the groups in front of the park and would tell them something, because after she would leave the groups dogged me. Huh. Okay. So everything was cool until that happened, huh? And so they all started, looks like Unaverage Joe says, I left the park shortly after that because of all the people giving me bad looks. So they were giving you the stink eye after that. Who knows what she said? Targets will deal with that stuff. Doesn't matter where you go. And Nick has got something to say on that disinformation. They get you to believe someone is responsible for all of it and try to get you to do something stupid to them. In reality, it's a delusional belief they give you, and the person is innocent. Sometimes that happens, and that's a real big payoff for the strategy of gang stalking, because of course they're always trying to get you to read into stuff and you'll look nuts or even question your own sanity. And when that happens, people, of course, they're going to make a judgment anyway. But when they see something, then they're like, well, you are really crazy. I don't know. I kind of believed you for a while, but, they don't understand the methodology. It's very effective. And if they can get you to attack somebody, that's a win for them. They're not involved. It's even better, because now you're just wacko, Yeah, that's a good point, Nick. I think I am gonna have to get a drink of water here. Oh, thanks for the advice on that, Colton. Oh my gosh. What are they doing to me? Okay. Nicholas Boserman says, I've almost killed myself with a few traps I set up. Wow. I've done that. I've set some booby traps. I set some pretty dangerous ones. I wouldn't advise anybody to do it. It just, for me, it was like, I knew it was illegal, but I'm thinking to myself at that point, if I got to deal with something like that because somebody breaks into my house in the middle of the night, I'm willing to take the risk, because I'm tired of this. I'm just really tired of it. That's messed up though, Nick. Well, got yourself with the boo. Just imagine if something would have happened, man. The cops are like, what the hell's this? You're stuck in the bear trap or something. Next thing, these people were coming in. Wow. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. I'm trying to see what's up with this comment. I'm just kind of proofreading it. Wow. So Emmanuel Godson has got a strange scenario, but it's classic. The kind of communication that targets deal with when they're dealing with the home invasions and the little innuendos and fun games. Once came home and a book was open on my bed for some reason. I read the open page. It was specific to a conversation I had the day before. Wow. Of course, if you tell anybody about that, you're just crazy, It's not like you can call the cops. They do that kind of stuff, man. That's one of their favorite little games to play, because if you try to say anything, you look nuts, and you can't really call the cops. Colton says, "No, Doc, I'm kidding." Oh, you were not. I, I'm just agreeing with you. Okay. Well, it looks like we're down at the end of the comments. Anybody have any questions or anything? We already talked about the undead animated people that are, being used in the collective against you, and I talk about that a lot. But it's, if you don't understand it, that's where you have a hard time with the logistics of it. And I think I was talking to Nick a while back, to where if you're trying to trick the supercomputer, and if you're trying to, because a lot of targets will talk about that, they're headed to the quick way, and at the last second they turn left and go over to the gas station or the grocery stores. I don't know, if I think just making your life simple and trying not to worry about a lot of that stuff is probably going to do you a lot better than trying to trick some kind of supercomputer, or try to throw the stalkers off all the time. You are a creature of habit, and sometimes they'll set stuff up. It just depends on what you're dealing with. And so, switching up your routine is okay. But, the mental exhaustion that targets deal with all these things that happen to them, the last thing you want to do is to start worrying about, people reading your mind, or, trying to figure out, because there's other ways that this stuff works, and it plays into that spiritual connection. It doesn't have to be some type of neural monitoring network and hive mind team that is reading your thoughts, and they know that you're going to go to you've been thinking about, getting a popsicle. So they know that you're going to the grocery store. They know you're going to the Kroger or whatever. I don't think that's how it works, man. But, simplifying your life is going to help you out, because mental exhaustion, and just the reciprocity of all the stuff you're dealing with is going to be your biggest enemy. Well, you can switch up your routine, but trying to do that, I think that's where you start slipping off the deep end. You want to simplify things. That way you have more environmental control. And just watching you try to do stuff like that is also going to feed into the campaign, because there's a lot of disinformation and rumors. You're on drugs, or you're selling drugs or whatever. They see you, being erratic, and it's just like, people are going to believe it. Okay. Okay, looks like we got another comment come through here. Okay, firefighter says, if you are being gang stalked, there are at least one person reading everything you say and hear. No doubt about it. Everything you say will be used to harass you. Yeah. Well, that goes along with the whole suggestion of surveillance and constant surveillance, because that environmental tyranny is there to get you into that state of mind where you just can't relax. People are always watching. They're always scrutinizing you. They want to get you into self-scrutiny. And, with all the psychic driving and the V2K and the voices and the demonic stuff and the isolation and the deprivation, that's deadly. It's not only can it, use, it gets you into a state of shell shock or just dysregulation, disassociation. But, just the isolation alone can drive somebody to the point where they're dysfunctional, let alone trying to do all that. But the suggestion that comes out of that is that you're being watched all the time. And like I said, when you get into the spiritual aspect of this, it's outside of the gang stalking is, from outside of our dimension fundamentally. Yes, there's puppets and all that, but it's, especially when you get into the stuff that it's like they've been watching you since you were a little kid. Yeah, there are government programs and stuff that do that. But at the same time, these things have been watching you. They know, and there's like that dimensional perspective where they can create illusions. Maybe they know where you're going, or they know what you're going to say, and they'll throw something out there. And then, of course, the suggestion is that there's cameras in your bathroom. Might not necessarily be that way. Maybe it is, or whatever, or that they're watching you constantly. And there's less of a human element in some of that than what a lot of people believe. Sometimes it is like that, but sometimes it's not. And sometimes the people that are attacking you with that information are possessed, or they're just like, the mindless, undead. They're not people of faith. They can be easily manipulated. And they're just, it's like that witchcraft thing. It's there's just like a gateway for the spiritual beings to attack you through these people. They don't necessarily have to know all that. I've heard confessions from people before. It's like they'll do something to somebody, and it's like, do you really know all that? Or, I just had a thought to, that I'm supposed to do this or to do that or to say this or to say that. And they don't really have all the information you think they've got. But it's that illusion. It's like, even if you were just going to set it up to freak somebody out, and I watched you and I watched your routine and got some info on you or hacked your phone or whatever. And then I went to the grocery store you usually go to, or where you get, gas, or, a restaurant or something, and just paid somebody to say something to you. They don't even know. They don't even know what I'm doing. You can tell them it's just a joke and that it's supposed to be funny, but to the guy who's, dealing with it, at that point, it's just, you're going to have that presupposition. This person knows everything, or maybe they're, even reading your thoughts or whatever. Sometimes there's ways that this stuff can work, but that suggestion that goes along with that methodology creates that environmental tyranny for the target. I think Nick has talked about the fact that he just, kind of lets all that stuff go. I mean, a lot of targets who deal with this stuff, I've done it, and I know a lot of other people that have mentioned it. You just get to the point where you don't care. I mean, that's dangerous though too, because you can become like an exhibitionist, where it's like they're trying to turn you into a psychopath or something, or whatever. As it's like you don't care about anything, and then it just takes a little bit of abrasive, toxic environmental tyranny to push you over the edge, where you just freaking out on everybody or whatever. But I think some of it is just to suggest it, because they've got to keep that pressure. I don't know if it depends on what you mean by that though, because it's like I said, when you get into the dimensional aspect of what you're dealing with, the spiritual landscape and all that stuff, technically, I guess you are being watched. Everything is being recorded. It's like what I said about the stalkers. Eventually they're going to be called out on everything. It's like the stuff that all targets deal with, and that tyranny is like everybody thinks I'm crazy, or they're just going to believe, all these rumors. Well, they might for a while, and it could last that way, maybe even for the rest of your life, but eventually it's all going to be brought back. And, everybody's being watched. God is going to judge everybody. So it's like, multiple camera angles for everything they've done to you. People think they're getting away with it. They think they're being sneaky, but it's all going to come out. It's all going to come out. So I guess in that aspect, yeah. And that, is the culpability, where these people want you to believe, and they freak you out and let you know that they're watching you or whatever, while the whole time they're doing the wrong thing. and God is watching them, and the angels and stuff like that are watching them. So it's like you got zero excuse at that point. I mean, really? So it's kind of a double-edged sword, man, and it's going to come back. Okay, so Emmanuel Godson says, I had to keep my outings a secret. I could not tell my mother where we were going. I drove her crazy when I refused to tell her where we were going. So you were trying to keep some anonymity and some secrecy about your activity. That's not necessarily a bad thing, I guess, because at that point, you can't, because they want you to read into stuff anyway, and it might not have anything to do with the people you're keeping it from, but how are you going to know? It's like when you test people out with information. It's like I've told that to targets before. When you're giving your testimony, if you just switch it around just a little bit, maybe some details or something, and then you get attacked with that later, you know where it came from. You know who's involved, in other words. Yeah, Nicholas says, yeah, they want you to start trying to drive different routes and stuff like that. It makes it fun for them and it runs you out of gas. Yeah, I've done it, I remember that I was getting messed with back when I smoked cigarettes, and they would play these little games, man, and it was like, I had to switch up the stores, and it was crazy. Some of the packs would be, opened a little bit or something, and they would always keep them in the same spot. And I noticed when I was waiting in line that, somebody else would ask for the same type of cigarette, and they would grab it from a different place. But as soon as I got up there, it would always be that one spot. And they would smile, have that little smirk. Oh, here you go. It's like, I'd be like, well, why don't you give me that one from over there? That one looks like it's got looks like somebody stepped on it. Did you drop that or something? And then you're going to play this little game. It's like, man, this just gets beyond, dude. It's hilarious. It's good. The stuff that targets deal with, man, is it's enough to drive anybody crazy, man. And, you got to settle for it sometimes. Yeah, Nick says there's nothing you can do about it. Try not to worry about it. And yeah, you change the stuff that you can, but it's like when people are paranoid about Facebook or something. It's like if you really believe these people are watching you all the time and stuff like that, you might as well just, kick back and, try to hook up with somebody on Facebook, or at least take a chance or whatever, because if they're really doing all that, then I don't know. Is there really any getting away from that? I don't know. I mean, you can't let them control you too much. Oh, okay. So it looks like Emmanuel Godson, you must have checked for RF radiation or video or bugs in your room. That's a lot of targets get into that. Now there's so much Wi-Fi and everything that when you use, I don't know, the RF detectors that I used to use would just go off pretty much wherever. You could point it at your ass and the damn thing would go off. There's just so much Wi-Fi and everything now that it's hard to use those. The other problem is sometimes you are dealing with that kind of stuff, man. They'll use cameras and stuff like that. I mean, it happens, but some of those turn off and on. So they'll hook it up. Because I looked into that stuff. There was some real strange things happening in that trailer when I was out there. One day we were in the living room. Me and this guy were talking because he came and lived with me for a while. His wife kicked him out of the house. We went to treatment together, and she was mad at him for something. I don't remember. But he came out there, and we were sitting in the living room, and all of a sudden we could hear this. And I had it happen before. And I told him about it. It was like a month before that. And I said, I heard something, zzz, zzz, and I was like, I don't know what it is. And it was coming from around where the the furnace was. You got all that metal duct work and everything. And he's like, oh yeah, he was being nice, but I don't think he didn't believe some of the stuff I was telling him, because I warned him when he came to live with me. And there's only so much you can do. And but it was like a while later, and we're sitting in the living room talking, and all of a sudden it was pretty quiet in the house, and zzz, zzz, and you could hear it. And he goes, is that what you were talking about? And he freaked out, man. And we went over there. It was coming right up from the furnace. He goes, somebody's got a phone down there. And he goes, let me go into, I'll tear that, because you got all the insulation and everything underneath the trailer. He's like, I'm going to get that. And I go, dude, just don't. This is, you're going to tear everything apart, and that it's going to be unlisted. It's not going to be trackable. And I was so exhausted at that point from dealing with a bunch of other stuff. I was just like, whatever. But yeah, he was pretty freaked out about that. And the thing is, you can use the hotspot or whatever, and you could even you could get batteries and stuff that would keep something like that going. And you can install cameras, and so you could turn that stuff off and on via the internet. It's like all that paranoia that targets, wondering if they're on the black web or whatever, the dark web. But they do that kind of stuff, man. Or they'll even use the neighbor's Wi-Fi, stuff like that. And then, trying to find it is almost impossible because they can just turn it off. Okay. Anybody got any more questions or anything? Oh, Chris Steger, welcome to the live stream. Yeah, I was just about to head out here, but hopefully you're doing well down there, Chris. And I know that we kind of talked about some of the stuff that I think you're probably dealing with earlier with the crowds that the hordes of people that target individuals deal with concerning people influenced spiritually that are into methamphetamines or other things, or just into something. And I know that where you are up there in the Great Falls area, that was pretty intense. I was up in that area. There was a lot of that going on, and a lot of people talk about the methamphetamine underworld being heavily involved in gang stalking. And I've even heard about people that hang out in those crowds purposefully just to find somebody that they can harass. And I had somebody confess that to me back in the 90s, and they told me all kinds of stuff. And this dude was laughing and telling me all kinds of little games that they play with people. They would see somebody getting it, and they would kind of stalk them and follow them home and everything. This is before all the internet and everything. And they'd wait until they would be tweaked out pretty good, and then they'd start playing games. After a couple days, they would start putting tape over the keyholes on their vehicles, and if they could break into their vehicle, they would turn the windshield wiper deal on, and crank the stereo if they could, depending on what kind of system it was. Play all kinds of little games with them, and then they would. I think he said there was like one of those little paddles that they got the rubber ball on it, and you can just kind of paddle it. It's got the rubber band, and he would take that up against the house at night and just start tapping it ever so slightly against the wall. And according to this guy, he said if you do it, the resonance you can get to the point where you can actually cause the walls to vibrate a little bit and freak people out or something like that. And I guess one of the other things that he would do is he would get a bunch of marbles and throw them up on the roof, after they would start freaking the person out. And then you could hear the marbles rolling, through the gutter system and stuff like that on the roof, just to freak people out. Different things they were doing with flashlights and, all kinds of different things that they would put on the front of the flashlight to create images, and they would flash it in the windows after they would, start throwing stuff at the house. And they do that kind of thing, man. And then, some of the people that I've run into in those circles, it's like they feed on that stuff. And I was blessed to be involved with a couple that, man, they were pretty, it seemed like they were just kind of like nomads at first. And then they started confessing some things to me, and they were like, they tweaked every day. I didn't know. They just told me they needed a place to live, and then they just kind of came out with it because I saw they had the little, Dr. Giggles box, and they would, shoot up and all that stuff. And, they would do it. They basically lived on that. It's weird to see, how some of the drug addicts just survive. I mean, it's, some of the people get strung out, and some of them look pretty healthy, and there's like a spiritual aspect to it. I've heard that from a lot of them, where it's like they're feeding on the people that they're getting involved in their little, addiction. Some of them even would say that they're trying to drive some of those people to suicide. And it's like spiritual vampirism. I don't know. I'm just telling you what I experienced, but they confessed to me a lot of that stuff, and that they would get the people that would profess Christianity involved in that. And if they were one of those fruitless Christians, non-bearing fruit Christians, that they would literally get the go-ahead, and they would be instrumental in, killing that person. They wouldn't like stab them. It was like a spiritual thing where the person would have like a heart attack, or would look like an overdose, or just creepy stuff, man. But I wasn't letting them live with me very long after that. And when they took off one day, I took all that stuff that they had and I put it out in my shed and made up a story that they had to leave and the landlord came over. But this is a really weird stuff going on in the underworld of methamphetamines or other things involved in witchcraft, or even the secret societies that you got that underworld, and people deal with that. I mean, it's weird that targets can be attacked everywhere, but it's it seems like they know. And but anyway, hopefully you're doing better, Chris. Okay. Colton says, is Great Falls similar to the Hood? It's the Hood. It's the Hood in Montana, man. It's all the Hood. Okay, let's see. Anybody else have anything? Okay, I'm kind of going through back up in the other comments. Okay, well, we've talked about the Gangstalking, Undead, the collective. We've talked about the different facets of Gangstalking and how people can become involved, and sometimes it does involve the government stuff and conscious collusions and people who are just drawn into it through social dynamics. And but the targets who deal with the higher forms of harassment, I mean, it's beyond. And I think that, even though there's technology involved in a lot of this stuff, is that gang stalking is primarily outside of this world, and you were dealing with things that are literally dimensional. Sometimes it involves some pretty unexplainable phenomena. People were mentioning that you don't know how they're getting through your security systems, and some of it's just weird, the things that targets deal with. And I believe that there's definitely a spiritual component to gang stalking. We are in a spiritual battle. And I mentioned before, if you guys have prayer requests, put them up in the comments, and I'll try to get those and address that in the next live stream. I do have to get back to work, and I'd appreciate your guys' prayers that there would be no further assaults on my personal property and some of the other things that I'm dealing with as far as the environmental tyranny that I've experienced pretty heavily in the last month and a half. But some of that stuff is just psychological, and I think that all targets need prayer for that. Some of the things that you're dealing with, of course, are very obvious, like the people that are playing games with you. But some of it's a lot more subtle, and the propensity for people to internalize that stuff and really not recognize that they're being manipulated. A lot of people, I've talked about the fact that they believe they're crazy, or they believe, I don't know, something's just off. Maybe I am bipolar, and I don't really. I'm not, coming up against all the stuff in psychiatry, but you hear a lot of people criticize targets. I think some of them are just crazy and just hearing voice. I don't believe that. I believe somebody, people they're not just going to hear voices. And when you get into, the psychiatric, framework of that, they really don't have an explanation for it either. And they always do the same thing consistently. They never involve any type of spiritual aspect to it, or anything that could involve possible government technology like V2K or other stuff. It's never that. Never. And we already know it exists. We already know the technology is out there. It's been around for quite a while. And we also know that there's demonic stuff going on. People, it's classic. And for people just to assume that because somebody's hearing voices or whatever, I don't buy into that stuff. And it can go into different levels too, where you're just feeling a certain way, or maybe you're just depressed, or all of a sudden you feel anxious, or you're getting intrusive thoughts, and that's spiritual. And sometimes it's hard to draw near to the Lord, and to study the Bible. It's like it gets worse. They'll start attacking you, or you'll just be restless or distracted, and it's all very incremental. So it's important to pray, and I'd appreciate all you guys' prayers. If you have any ideas for future live streams or videos or whatever, go ahead and put them up in the comments. And I'd like to thank everybody once again for helping me out with that. I always put the donation link up in the description. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Share this stuff. This live stream probably wasn't that good, but you know what? It is what it is. And we get together, and it's, I need you guys, man. I do. And I appreciate everybody that comes in and hangs out with me, because it's lonely. As a target, it is. It's kind of like being in outer space. And if nothing else, even if you're one of those people that are social, maybe like Nick, you still kind of feel isolated in your circumstances. God bless. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.